Okay, so today we're going to be talking about exemplification, classification, division, and definition. It's a lot of stuff to fit into one presentation, but since we're not writing separate essays on them like we are with cause effect, comparison, contrast, narrative, I didn't think that there was going to be really any reason to separate them into a bunch of different lessons. So I figured since they're just going to be aspects of essays that we'll be doing all semester, why not just throw them into one? First, I wanted to talk about some of the issues I've seen with the papers so far. I think it's just the idea that y'all have, you're a Tuesday, Thursday, and most of the ones I've graded so far are Monday, Wednesday. That's caused, y'all not to see any come through yet, but did anybody ask the other day, like, when I thought I was going to be done with them all?
Yes.
Or what did I say?
Saturday.
Saturday night? Good. That's still the answer. I really anticipate having them all done by Saturday evening, and not like 6. I'm talking like technically even maybe Sunday morning, like 2 a.m. You know what I'm talking? I'm talking like Saturday evening going into the late, like until I pass out. That's the time I'm talking about, not like 6 p.m. You're like going, where's my paper? And it's like, that's not evening. It's not even dark out. Come on. I generally don't go to bed till about midnight or 1 anyway, so to me, evening is like the end of the evening. I don't know if people go to bed at 10. I don't understand that. I do, however, in the essays I've seen so far, which it doesn't affect all of you, but it does affect some of you. I just want to really quickly cover some of the issues that I've seen with the essays so far, in case you see some of these comments being made. So I've got a lot of people who are doing a lot of emotion in the explanation of their story, but not any explanation. So it's just like, oh, I felt this and I felt that, but I don't see like any details and stuff. So that I'm dinging people on. Switching the verb tenses, which we talked about, going from past to present. It's sad, bless you, but not really. It's just not satisfying the topic as much. People who aren't showing enough about the relationship with the dead or dying person, and the writer's not doing an attempt to make the relationship important and the reader care. For the most part, people have been doing it, but sometimes, bless you, it hasn't been happening. So, like, don't take for granted that because it's a grandmother, somebody will understand that that's somebody that you love and were very close to, because some people aren't close to their grandmothers. Some people never met their grandmothers. It's not, like, guaranteed in every case. Sometimes not a strong thesis because nobody knew where they were going until they got to the end. I imagine that's true in most cases anyway, especially on the death topics. I'm trying to move ahead. I almost went forward. Okay, some people aren't really reflecting on the event at all, just giving details. So in the exact opposite way, some people are only emotional with no details, some people are only details, no emotions. Some people are giving very little to explain through examples how life was different from the time before the event had occurred to the time afterwards. And in some cases, it felt like people had done narrative essays before on a vaguely similar topic, but were like, I need one for this class, and was like, this is close, and then kind of went intro, conclusion. And that's happened in a few, not all of them, but it just kind of doesn't feel like the whole thing's together as one piece. It feels like it's two separate things put together. I haven't had this yet, except for a couple times, and I don't think I'll have it from the dual credit students at all, but 5-paragraph essay style with like intro, 3 body paragraphs that support different key points, and then a conclusion, that wouldn't work here. That wouldn't work here at all. So really, let me tell you the 3 ways that I was affected by this unfamiliar surrounding. Number 1, like I don't know, it doesn't feel right for this essay. Sometimes people aren't choosing a first event, which is problematic. That means you have to go back and write about a new event, because this one's not the first, or make it seem like it is the first, because it is just an essay. It's not like it's documentary proof. The introduction needs to set the stage. People rarely are. They're like, death is a thing, and then they just move on. People going into the second person quite a bit, and you don't realize you're doing it, I don't think, but much like I just did, where I said you don't realize you're doing it. It's a thing that we do where we talk about people and what general people do, but we say you instead of people. So you say, like, you never know what you've lost until it's gone. You should be saying people don't know what they've lost until it's gone, but instead people say you. So I might make a comment about that. People who are writing about the unfamiliar or uncomfortable situations, people are writing on the topic of the unfamiliar surrounding. There are people who are writing about unfamiliar or uncomfortable situations rather than unfamiliar surroundings. And these ideas are completely different. So you might be uncomfortable in the situation, doesn't mean it's an unfamiliar surrounding. And if you are doing the unfamiliar surrounding paper, you have to approach it from the sense of, here's what the unfamiliar surrounding is like. Here's what the one that I come from is like. So I've had a lot of people like saying like they went to a location and telling me what's weird about the location, but not explaining how that's different than where you come from. Because some of the stuff I saw like was stuff that I was like, that applies to me here. Like, how is that unfamiliar to you over there? Like, that sounds like Texas. And so there's not enough explanation like showing me in every case. So those are just some issues I'm seeing. There's one more thing I wanted to talk about though before we move on to the exemplification. Classification, division. Where is this pointed? Is this pointed at the board? Yes. I'll get my marker out. And I want to show you something about the grades you can expect to see. Let's see. So I have these two scales here. I don't want to. This is good enough. This is a scale of 0 to, well, 0 to 100. These aren't lined up, are they? Oh, gosh. Not even close, are they? Is that better? Yeah. And then over here, this is another 0 to 100 scale. This I will call the percentage difficulty scale. This I will call the points earned scale. Okay? And these are generally side by side and they kind of correlate. Okay? So I generally consider like to get anywhere between 0 and 50 points on an essay requires very little effort. So generally 50 takes about that much effort, which if I just did this evenly, it's like what? 20? No. Oh, that looks great. 20, 40, 60, 80, is that pretty close? That's pretty close. That's not bad. 20, 40, 60, 80 percentage difficulty, okay? And this is like in terms of like how much work output it would take, you know, compared to, I guess, everybody else. Or in terms of like, I don't really know. It's just I consider that to be percentage difficulty. Interpret that, I guess, how you will. To me, it's kind of like how hard it would be to get it. So 50, you can notice that just about anybody can throw a rock and hit a 50 on an essay. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort there. Very rarely do I go below 50 on a grade. Very rarely. Unless we get to the research paper and people aren't citing like 3 of their sources out of 5. And then I'm like, well, I got to take off 20 points per source. And then I have people getting like in the 15s, 20s until they give me more sources, and then it's fine. Then, though, it kind of ramps up from there. So we have, like, I'd say 60 and 70 take about that much effort. So I'd say that most people putting forth a modicum, small amount, of effort, like 30% of their brain power, could get to like a 70, I think. And this is like difficulty. And this is talking about eventually through revision, okay? Now, 80 is a little tougher. Not by much. 90 is a little tougher to get to. And then we have 95 is about here. And it goes like 96, 97, 98, 99. Okay, and the reason I'm showing you this is because other teachers, like, have I talked to you about how many hundreds I give out per semester?
This one's Libra.
Huh?
Not.
No, I give about 3.
Oh, okay.
Across all semesters, or like all classes. I have like 300s per semester. Sometimes that goes into Brit-Lit, but not very often because there's just not very many people. Although I have given one in Brit-Lit this semester, so that has already happened. So that's 1. There's 2 more. Fight for them. But so I consider like if you like the hardest difficulty, of course, is to get the 100. But with 80% difficulty, you can get to like 98, 97. But like really, that makes it not that hard to get up to an A, but to get to the upper echelons of an A, it's a little harder. And so I consider like my 95 to be like most teachers' hundreds. Like if a teacher says, "Great job, 100," me, I'll say, "Great job, 95." And if you get anything above 95, that means that I found you especially brilliant as compared to your peers. So it's a way of looking and saying, "Oh wow, you found that to be exceptional." Because it's kind of like my way of giving higher than 100. But if you give a higher than 100 in college, it kind of looks weird. Like if you take a math test, you can't be like, "You got the right answer, 110." It doesn't make any sense, right? It's 100% correct. In English, 100% correct means perfect. On a subjective measure of quality of writing, when the thing could go any direction, I give it 100% perfect. That means I think that there are no issues with it. Actually, no, I didn't give 100. Somebody didn't italicize when they should have put in quotes. So I couldn't give it 100. So they're one revision away from 100. Because I told them, I said, do this. So hopefully they get it. But so I really think that this is, including, I think, revisions. I think that through a revision, most people can get to a 95 without much difficulty. But the 96 and 97s, you get those, you'll be like, whoa, mom, dad. Like, it's going to be weird, but like you got hundreds maybe on essays like all growing up because teachers feel guilty. They're just like, well, I don't want to let them revise because that takes too much work to regrade their papers. I don't have that much time. I got kids and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you don't want to do stuff. But me, I'm like, I want to show them, like, there's little extra places to go. And I have these other grades that sort of balance out me doing that. Like, I think the quizzes with the 2 attempts are relatively easy. The labs are super easy. We had a discussion about the labs, right? Yeah. Super, super easy. The presentation later is super, super easy. The average, meaning the mean, median, and mode. Do you know what those are in math? Okay. Mean, median, and mode on the presentation is 100. It's both the most occurring grade, the average grade, and then the fact that it's the average tells you something. It might be a 99.8, but it's, for the most part, the average, mean average is also 100. I do this because I want you to know that when you get something higher than 95, that's super quality. And so I balance it out with those other points. So I just want you to know that when you see a grade come in, and you're like, what the heck? I'm a dual credit intelligence student. I've done best in my classes my whole life. Why am I getting a 70 on this paper? Well, I tell you in the feedback, I say you're missing this, this, and this. Do it. And then you do it. You turn it back in. Boom, 95. No big deal. So I just wanted to prepare you, because I think some of you, you'll see your grade and you'll be like, what? I was totally unprepared. This is completely new information. So this way you're not going to be, and then watch, like a bunch of you are going to end up getting 95s, and you're going to be like, oh, I shouldn't even cared. But I still wanted to show you this to kind of give you my philosophy of ethics in regards to grading, which is one of the reasons I allow revision, because this also means that I care about your efforts. So I do want you to end up having a great essay at the end. I would love if everybody ended up getting like that 95 at least. This does mean, though, if I give you a 95, I'm probably not going to give you a ton of feedback, like, oh, here's what you can do to get to 100. Because with hundreds, it's just sort of like I go, oh my gosh. It's like a bright, shining light, like at the end of a tunnel. Like, oh, and then I just go, that's amazing. But with a 95, I go, oh, it's competent. You did everything you were supposed to do. Nice work. So I'm not going to give a whole lot more effort, because I don't necessarily even know. I think it's like originality and creativity are what gets you like further than that. But if you get to that 95, I would feel satisfied. I would be like, I don't really have to revise. I could, but I don't really have to. Because think about the effort it's going to take to go from a 95, bless you, to 100, right? On each of our essays, they're worth 10%. The research paper is worth a little more. Okay, 10% of your grade. So that's out of 2,000 points. 10% of your grade is going to be 200 points for essay, which means every point on that essay is worth 2 points out of 2,000. So 0.1% of your grade. So if you go from a 95 and you revise up, remember the level of difficulty here. You revise up and get to like a 97, and I'm like, wow, you got 2 points. You just earned yourself 0.2 points added to your final grade. Like, It's like not worth the effort. You know, it's like I just went from a 94.3 to a 94.5. Boom. Take that, other students in my class. No, there's other places where you could probably do work, study for a test in another class, like really put forth the effort on the research paper, like gathering good research, rather than being like, you know what, I'm going to revise that 95 essay that I got, because the effort's not worth it. If you go from a 70 to a 95, that's way different. That's like 25, 5 points. No, that's completely opposite. 1.25 points on your final average, which is actually fairly significant if you were to go up 25 points on one of those essays. So, you know, revise wisely. Oh. Be wise, revise. Nah, it works better the other way, even though it doesn't sound as good. Revise wisely. Any questions about this? Not like, why are you evil? Does this feel unfair? You understand my principles, at least. I mean, I know there's probably some of you who aren't saying, no, it's not unfair, but you're like, yes, it's unfair. I want hundreds. Don't worry, you'll get tons of in other grades. Labs, presentations, all over the place. Annotated bibliography is really easy. That's like a 95 too, though. So from here, if nobody has any questions, and you can have questions about other things too, not just this. Any questions about other aspects of the class or things you're a little hazy on?
If we revise it, could we like just turn back in?
Yes. The way in fact, I'll show you real quick what it looks like when you go revise. Just about everybody, you know, assuming that you've turned in your essays. And I think what I might do is maybe this afternoon before. Oh yeah, by the way, this is what I was looking at. Had a whole like list of things. That's for another class. Let's see. Let me do Magnus Baraka. So when you get on here and look, I gotta make sure the camera is all set up for this now. Camera. Oh. Nope. There we go. Everybody's gone on to Blackboard at least once, right, so far?
Yeah.
I would be very disappointed to find out nobody's been there. Like, how did you get in there again? I had a student ask me the other day, 3 weeks in. How do you go to Blackboard? So you go to assignments, and I don't care what people see Magnus Baraka's grade is. So now the Essay 2 is available to start submitting if people want to do that. But Essay 1, you'll click it, and what you'll see, you won't see like the submission page like you saw before. You'll see this, and you're like, oh crap. Well, I mean, you'll see an actual paper. Why are there all those decimal points? 100.00000. Okay. Oh, no, let's do an essay. Let's do something that looks more like an essay. Ah, there we go. Without the spaces. Remember, don't do the spaces. But depending on if you do it, is anybody doing this from your phone completely? Found a way? No? Okay. Sometimes depending on the browser that you're on, it might cut the side off like this. And you're like, how do I do this? There's two options. Hopefully it puts this at the bottom to start new. If not, and you're seeing something like, by the way, if you ever see that blue bar, you can pull the thing back out. You can hit start new, and then that brings you right back to the submission page. And then all you got to do is just, you know, attach the new file, hit submit, and what it'll do is make it look much like mine does here, where I'll end up seeing your most recent attempts, the one that's not graded, and then all the rest I'll just ignore, or I'll, you know, those will be your old grades, and this one will be your newest. Did anybody see like zeros start flopping in for you over the weekend? I think I forgot to mention this, but it does have feedback that says, like if you click on it, it says, hey, this 0 is just a placeholder because you submitted like multiple attempts. So I was hoping nobody like freaked out on that, because I don't think I talked about that beforehand. And I was hoping somebody didn't say, Mom, Nichols gave me a 0. And she's like, what? Call the school. And then they call me and they're like, Mr. Nichols, we have to talk to you about the 0. I'm just like, I'm not allowed to talk to parents. I'm not.
Yeah.
Unless you sign a paper, I think that applies to even you. But I can talk to your counselor openly, and then she can talk to your parents. It's weird, but that's how you would submit again if you needed to. It's a very easy process. But I'm a more visual person, so rather than just say, oh, go to the same spot, I wanted to kind of show, because I would never be able to keep up with that. My wife tried to tell me what to get her at Taco Bell. She's like, just give me this, 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 and this. I'm like, I'm going to need a picture, because I don't know what any of those things are. And she's like, find the one that's got the picture of this, 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 and this. I'm like, it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. Any questions further? More questions? Because as you'll note, I will answer them thoroughly. Yes.
Have you
It better not be a Big Brother question.
a group project?
Okay. Have I further done anything on it?
Yeah. Decided the groups.
I haven't decided the groups because I still feel like we haven't 100% figured out the group rationale, and so I thought we'd maybe finish that on the other day. Because if I make the groups and people are like, well, this is not what we talked about, or I did not think this was going to be a possibility, I was like, oh, okay, well. I have, however, been working with Google Docs and Google Slides and trying to figure out how to use those. Mostly Google Slides, because that would be, imagine, people said, no, not a big paper presentation or PowerPoint submission. But I haven't made groups yet, no. Because I want to figure out what people's schedules are first. I'm trying to find a good form for gathering people's schedules and like what the best way to do that would be. Because the paper form that I have would have to be massive in order to get people's like where they are, what they're doing. And then I have to figure out whether people want to tell me where they are, what they're doing. They're like, that's kind of personal. I don't want to tell you my schedule. I'm like, oh, well, then what do we do? Granted, that doesn't affect dual credit too much. Most of you know if you're in band or not, or some sport. I was trying not to say that dismissively. I didn't do sports in school, but that doesn't mean that your sports aren't amazing. Good job with your sports. I'm very impressed with people who can put their body through that. I can't. Let's see. Weights, lifting. I just don't even. Like, that's on purpose. People are doing that on purpose. I just don't understand. Even if it's healthy. Any more questions? Oh, I do want to address one more thing. Don't hop on there and try to do that quiz immediately today, because I've reserved it because I want to make some more changes to this quiz as well. So there is a quiz, due on Sunday, but if I end up taking, like I said before, until tomorrow to get it on there, and I think I actually will, because I have a conference, not a conference, but a college fair I'm going to tonight at McKinney. I will extend that deadline until Monday instead of just Sunday. So I'm probably going to end up extending that deadline to Monday. I can't foresee a situation in which I wouldn't. So let's just go ahead and say it's due Monday and not Sunday now as a result of me not getting it finalized until tomorrow. I don't know why I sound like a frog there for a second. That's it. Any more questions? Yes.
Do you suggest doing like the labs like in little chunks over the time until Thanksgiving versus just sitting down and doing them all?
Do I suggest doing the labs in little chunks instead of all at once? I mean, I suggest that, yes. But in the same vein, I know that I wouldn't. What I would personally do, because if I get in a habit or like in a mode, generally speaking, like I'm very, like the way I grade is I try to have a set long amount of time, which is why I grade best on the weekends. Like starting in the morning and I just start going, and so I get into the habit and I start, doing really well at keeping up and, kind of like once you've started doing an activity, like a menial like activity, you keep going and you get better at it. So it's like the habit of it keeps me going. So if I was to get in this mode where I'm having to like do multiple choice quizzes and try to get them right, I'm already in that multiple choice quiz brain mode. So I'm going to try to get as many done as I can if I'm allowed to. So that would be how I would do it. But I would think that most human beings, gradually, so you're not overwhelmed all at once. I have incredible bursts of energy, which I have to essentially trap it. I have to trap lightning in a bottle every time I have these bursts of intellectual consistency. Baby's killing intellectual consistency. Love the baby. But look, when I'm like, I need to grade papers, and she goes, hi, hello, and I'm like, what papers? Or no, I say, I got to go grade, and my wife says, can you do this one thing real quick? And I'm like, yeah, and then 2 hours later. I do love my wife, but I got things to do. I have students relying on me here. Any more questions? All these have been good so far. I want more, if you can think of them.
Quizzes due on Monday.
Yep. Yes?
Okay, so I submitted my essay, but it didn't actually show the paper like you said it should.
Uh-huh.
So I just I'm pretty sure. I mean, I turned it in online, and I'm just not 100% sure that it's submitted because it's still on my this is download.
If you see the word download, what program did you use to do it?
Pages, and I exported it to Word.
You could just. You could like try. I mean, I'm not going to penalize you for this. You could just, to be sure, you could export it again and do Word,
Okay.
and then submit it, and then export it again and do PDF and submit it, like twice. And that way, hopefully, one of those will actually work. Because if you're seeing a download button, so do I. And if it's a Pages format and it somehow got stuck in Pages format and like didn't submit right, then that's what I'll end up having, and I can't open Pages. Like I have no program that'll do it. So yeah, go ahead and double check and then submit it 2 times, and just to be sure, because I think that's probably the best idea. Additionally, there's something I think I mentioned before, but I still had some people doing it anyway. Please, in the future, I would want people to hit this button, browse my computer, to find the essay attached from a program you've saved it to, or like you've downloaded it from Google Docs onto your computer and then you attach it that way. Don't do this write submission box. I know it's possible, but it's very difficult for me to read on Blackboard. It's all single space and a weird font I don't know, and if I try to make the font bigger, there's no way to make the font bigger. It's always small, and I have bad eyes. And so I just get kind of sad, more mad. And I try to like still say, okay, they didn't know, grade it nice. But I will still say I'm just doing my best effort to grade it nice. I can't guarantee I'm grading it completely and totally nice. I might be grading it punitively. I hope I don't. So, browse computer, that's the best way to do it. More questions? Any questions for Magnus Baraka? No? Questions for me? Something you just thought of? Yes?
Where did you get the name Magnus Baraka?
Magnus from Skyrim. The Eye of Magnus, it's a staff.
Nice.
And Baraka was a character from a video game called Mortal Kombat. I think Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah.
And he has these giant blades come out of his hand. And he slashes you. But it's also a mild homage to Barack Obama. But really the name collectively is meant to have a strength that reminds you of what's the guy's name on Final Fantasy VII? Barrett. I wanted you to think of a guy who looks like Barrett from Final Fantasy VII. Do I know Barrett from Final Fantasy VII? Final Fantasy... Final who? Well, we have these things called video games. This is risky, because if somebody decided to make a weird type of image out there, this is not going to... This is essentially what I feel that Magnus Baraka looks like. Roughly. So every time you see Magnus Baraka getting on there submitting paper, he's kind of like The Rock a little bit. And if you notice, a lot of his responses, like when later in that next semester, 1302, you'll notice his discussion posts often sound very sarcastic and cheesy, and he argues with himself. Kind of reminds you of something The Rock would do. So imagine like The Rock in this costume on a video game. That's Magnus Baraka.
His hands are bigger than his head.
Yet you probably watched The Incredibles and had no problem, right?
Where's one?
Talk to me about realism, you Pixar loving. I love Pixar too. Actually, the person who said that, do you like Incredibles? I don't know who said it. Do you like Incredibles?
I haven't seen it in a few years, so I don't know.
But you did like it when you watched it, right?
I watched it when I was like 6. I haven't seen it.
That came out when you were 6?
Probably, I don't know.
I'm old. I'm so old. I already told you, all right, I'm going to feel the oldest that I'm going to feel, I think, is that hill is when my daughter's in the same grade that all of my students in this class are. Then I'll be like, yeah, I'm old now. I'm old. I'm straight up, like, officially old guy. It's already coming, like, where I ask, like, y'all seen this movie? You're like, movies? We watch YouTube. And I'm like, if that's not a Netflix series, I have got no idea.
is the last class that anyone's gonna be born in the 90s. This graduating class.
Yeah.
Like next year, whoever graduates, they have to be born in 2000.
I guess that's sad.
Unless they're.
Not really though.
Unless they like fail the grade. Yeah.
Any other questions? So today we're talking about, as it says on the syllabus, exemplification, classification, division, and definition. Xavier, hit one of those light switches, not both. Boom, good job. That was a good choice too. I tend to prefer the right. So excellent work. Exemplification, classification, division, and definition. Pay no attention to the crap underneath. Besides the difficult to read. So all three of these are going to be covered in one lesson today. So now why are we doing all in one lesson? Mainly because I feel that these generally make up aspects of good essays. The book covers them as different types of essays, but to me it's more like aspects of good essays. So since we're not writing separate essays on them, I just figured we could cover them all in one lesson and get that out of the way. And when I mean aspects, I'm saying like exemplification is the noun form of exemplify, which generally just means to make example of or provide example. So an exemplification essay generally would be composed almost entirely using examples as its method of support, but in our essays, we're going to use examples. You've already used examples in the narrative essay. But I just don't think that there's a point in having us all write a separate exemplification essay. That would take us from 6 essays, counting the final exam that you don't necessarily have to take, to like 7. And if we did classification division, that'd be 8. Definition 9 is a ton of essay. Classification division can also technically be a style of essay, but I think it's more relevant when you limit it to a discussion of the method of classifying and dividing within an essay, which will definitely happen, throughout the semester. Cause and effect, you'll have to do that. Comparison, contrast, and you'll see why. Rather than creating an entire essay out of such, like an essay that's purely classification and division. Same goes with definition. Definition this is the tough one. Sorry. To define something, which as an essay would utilize a number of different writing styles and methods of support to make it plain, but we just use definition when we need to. I actually saw a number of the narrative essays that were defining, like I said, was a good idea, death contextually. Death is such and such, based on your own personal experience and not a dictionary definition. No, I really can't talk about that. No, I can't. No. Definition saved me on the internet the other night. I made a post on the internet and then I was able to provide the dictionary definition of the word that they were saying that I didn't satisfy, and then I explained to them that I did satisfy it. And I used dictionary definition. That did save me, but that was not in an essay format. So I was going to disregard everything I said in the last 30 seconds because I tried to make it work. I can't even tell you what the example is. It's not going to work. So I don't feel like these are distinct enough to create a new essay out of, unless you're like in a scientific essay where classifying, dividing, and defining are an everyday state of affairs. You may have to write those types of essays for your science classes, especially like biology and anatomy, physiology. You have to write essays. But what I think these chapters do well is explain exactly what is necessary in each of those types of support to achieving quality versions of examples, classification, divisions, and definitions. So that's what we're going to do. And they get really detailed into it, I think, and they provide a lot of terminology that helps explain. So luckily I think this way, so we don't have to write a ton of essays. That's all this says. Examples. So we're going to talk about examples first, exemplification. And really the moral of the story here is to provide them. Or my thesis, you could say, is to provide examples. Students should provide examples. Examples are used to add support to an essay by illustrating or explaining a concept. Examples are used to explain and clarify, add interest, persuade. It's generally what they're used for. Add support to an essay by illustrating and explaining a concept, explain and clarify, add interest, or explain or persuade. So near the end of your narrative essay, when you're saying, "Oh, I've learned to live my life to the fullest," which is a phrase I told you not to use, but I'm just using an example. Live my life to the fullest. For example, just recently I went bungee jumping. You don't have to say the words, for example, like you just say, "I just recently went bungee jumping and it was such a rush and I can't believe I've never done anything like this before." Boom, you're showing me you're living your life to the fullest. add interest. In fact, I think that particular one adds interest because it'll really bungee jump. If you went into more detail on that and you had time in an essay like to go into more detail, like the rush, it'd be pretty cool. Persuade. I think that this works best in speeches, but it's very tempting when you're providing examples to provide personal examples, but oftentimes in like an argumentative research paper style environment, which you're going to be eventually moving toward, something that might work to explain to your friends why something's the case, like, oh, I went through this experience, doesn't really do what you want it to. Okay, for example, like if I had a friend who went and saw It, right? And they were like, it sucked. Like it was terrible. I hated it. It's really funny how I didn't realize every pronoun actually works for the movie. And you're like, oh man, really? I thought I was gonna be so excited about it. No, it's terrible. Don't go watch it. And then you decide not to watch the movie. And the example that they gave was the experience they had. It was just like, it wasn't scary, you know. You're like, well, wasn't it scary? And they're like, well, like when the clown would pop out, it was always just funny. It wasn't scary. And you're like, oh, okay. And they just tell you kind of a couple of examples. Now, the problem with that is that example probably did persuade you in speech, but you'd probably, I think, go home and then look on the internet to provide even more examples, and you'd just be like, oh, okay, well, Flickster showed me that it's got an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's pretty damn good. Maybe I'll look at what the people reviewing it said, because they gave it like a 70-something, and then they're looking like, oh gosh, people like it. My friend's crazy. So it's something that I think works in everyday speech, but then even if you ever try to like track it down and like read something about it, you're going to want more detailed examples. Hey, has anybody seen It?
Yeah.
I really want to, but we have a baby, and you can't. I mean, I could bring her. But yeah, I want to be that guy. So my question is, there's this GIF on the internet right now that's got like it with a kid's hand and he's waving it at you. Does that happen in the movie? So you rip somebody's arm off and he waves it at you.
Did you say a gym?
You don't remember?
I did think the movie was funny though.
Yeah, I think it's pretty fun.
It's got a clown.
I mean, the effects are kind of cheap.
Never seen Yeah, I'm not even.
Okay, well I was just curious because I was wondering if that was really in there. Now that it is, that's kind of funny. I kind of want to. I wanted to see it before, but really want to see it now. Now explain and clarify. So let's talk about examples here. If you're explaining that you saw somebody jumping hurdles one time who was the worst hurdle jumper ever, that idea does not explain itself, right? People are going to want examples. What did they do that made them the worst hurdle jumper ever, right? You need to provide some example of that particular individual and how they are the worst. You need to be specific and clarify through more detail. Jump. Nope. Nope. Forget it. Run. Just run straight through. Run straight through. You got this. Beat them all. Beat them all. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. New lane. New lane. Stop this other guy. Got it. It's terrible. He's like, well, that was rough. I feel bad for the other guy. Guy who he ran in front of. So, when providing this example, you need to say something like this. He was the worst hurdle jumper ever, like as the crowd could plainly see. Not only did he never clear a single hurdle, but he completely quit trying and ran straight through them. Though running should be an easy enough task, he managed to mess that up by falling over. And though being unable to maintain his footing while running without even jumping over hurdles would be bad enough, he also, even with lines painted on the ground, managed to start running the wrong way. Completely caught off another competitor. It's hard to even imagine a worse performance. That's a good example. Like if I was to say, dude, we saw this dude, he was the worst hurdle jumper ever, man. It was like crazy. Oh, really? What did he do? He was just like, like when he was like doing the hurdle thing, just bad. Right, yeah, but what did he do that was bad? It was like, he's just like, you know? And I'm like, no, I don't know. Like, you would explain to me, and I need something like that, not like, bro, you just don't even know. Like, I know I don't even know. Tell me what I need to know, because that can be irritating. That's why we need examples, good examples, details, to help clarify. Give ample example. If you think it's even possible you need an example, try adding one. The example that doesn't work can be removed in revision. It's easier to remove an example that you thought about during the writing process than it is to add one after the writing process. So it's always best to add one, take it away later. Would be my suggestion. Now, examples can also add interest. So if I tell you, for example, this is really exciting, listen to this. Mirrors can be used to focus light rays to create intense heat. Is that door closed? Is somebody trying to get in?
No. Someone ran down the hall.
Okay, I thought somebody was like, has anybody seen Tommy Boy back in the day? That old movie with like Chris Farley in it? He like runs up to the college on like the day of his final exam and he like grabs the door handle. He's pulling on it. He's like, no, God, why? Why? And he goes, ah. And then like somebody just walks through and pushes the door. Because it's a push door, not a pull door. And he's like, and he walks through. That's what I thought was going on. I was like, dude, pull the door. Like that's wrong situation. But if I tell you, hey, mirrors can be used to focus light rays to create intense heat, y'all. That's really exciting, right? Not really. And yes, I did call it Jim. However, if I use an example, I might be able to generate enough interest to get people wanting to know how this works. So you're like, okay, how do you, like, not really. I don't care if you can focus light through mirrors and it makes intense heat. Like, who cares? But if I say something like this, 2 square meters of sunshine, which is like, that. No, it's 6 feet, right? So it's like this by like a square of that. A square of this. When focused, can get to 3,500 degrees, which is hot enough to melt steel or even rock. Melt rock. And that's just from the amount of sunlight that if you unfocus it, if like you just spread it out the way it normally would be, it would give 2 people a tan on the beach. Right? It's crazy. I think that, even though probably still, since you're like, I hate science, you don't care, but some people are like, well, I'm a little interested now. Like you got that Mythbusters mind where you're like, I want to see it. Let's see it. One of the guys does not speak English. Very well, he speaks it.
This focus, can we see it?
Just look, yes. By spraying some water.
So if my hand's here, it's okay, but if it went there, what would happen?
Not at the focus. Here it's okay, but...
And even a mirror this big, would it be powerful enough to kind of set light to something?
Yes.
Can I try it?
Go ahead.
Okay, show you the focus. Okay. Oh, life. Can we do that again? That's astonishing. I've never seen anything set light to wood that quickly. How hot is it now? What temperature does it get to?
That focal point, we can reach a temperature higher than 3,500 degrees C. And there is currently no known materials that could resist this.
There is nothing on Earth that can withstand the temperature right in the middle there.
Nothing.
And I'm pointing at it.
Exactly.
Just 2 square meters of sunshine can melt steel pretty easily. I would love to try and weld some stuff with sunshine. It would be really nice. If you had 3 people sunbathing, they would be collecting that amount of sunshine. And look what it does. Despite having traveled 93 million miles, the energy of the sun can even melt rock. Look at that! See, to me, that's far more amazing than melting steel. Like, I see steel melt every other day, but I've never seen anything like that.
Actually, I imagine most of you thought that the coolest part was the wood, right? You stick the wood in the water, and it just catches on fire. That's pretty hot. This instant burst into flames, right? But really the coolest thing is when that rock starts smoking. So you're essentially creating like magma, like volcanic, lava. It's cool. You don't think it's cool?
I thought it was cool.
You're like my dad, when like, I did trumpet for 4 years in high school. I did it in middle school too. And I got 4th chair all state my senior year, right? And I went to all region every year. area in 3 of the years. So I was like the 4th best trumpet in the state of Texas, like in my senior year of high school. That's impressive, right? My brother starts band. He's in percussion. They give him the cymbals. They go to their first band concert with my little brothers in 6th grade, and he goes, psh. And my dad goes, whoa, Chris, that's better than anything you ever did in band. And I was like, thanks, Dad. But I knew what he meant. Like, it's something you can see and it's flashy. And whereas he was like, who is he playing? That's what you are. You're like, melt rock, that's just smoke. I've seen smoke. It's ridiculous. So that's not even 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. It's Celsius, guys.
Over 6,000.
Yeah, 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's absurd. Y'all need to get some science, y'all. I don't know what's wrong with you.
I like it.
Yeah, okay, all right. Need more of that. Need more excitement. Not sleeping with eyes open. What's up with his hand? He's like spritzing it. Come on, get out of there. So examples can also be used to persuade. So no persuasion was going on in those last examples. They were mostly just informative. They were just facts that we're seeing play out. They can also be used to persuade. So take this example. If I tell somebody that I had a superior product than the other on the market, right? I need proof, okay? And as proof, I need examples that show how superior my product is. Like I have the best product. You're like, okay, so I can't just tell you my company sells the best blender on the market. Guys, with the best blender. And you're like, well, what can it blend? What makes it the best? What can blend anything? Like anybody's going to say that. So you need to give examples of what exactly could be blended by the blender. Foods and liquids are too obvious, really. Because if you say, look, I can blend a kiwi. Like my fist can blend a kiwi. Like I don't need to see a blender blend a kiwi. That's easy. And like, all right, well, this blender can blend more than food. If you needed it to, it can even blend an inanimate object like an iPhone.
Will it blend? That is the question. I love my new iPhone. It does everything. But will it blend? That is the question. Let's find out.
No, it's like an iPhone 1 or 2. It's like really
like
old.
a 3G.
3G? Oh.
It's gotta be the battery. Ooh.
I smoke. Don't breathe this.
Good for you.
Now, you fans on YouTube have asked me to blend an iPhone, so I did. But I have another.
Oh, hilarious. So there it is. There's an iPhone when you blend it. And he said he's going to sell it on eBay right after that. I forgot to cut it off. So it can blend an iPhone. So that's pretty impressive, right? But the way examples work is in order to provide examples that will actually persuade people, you need to provide a fair range of examples. In your narrative essays, you probably tried to show if your topic was about loss of a loved one, that the individual in question meant a lot to you. But if you just showed one example of that, you probably didn't convince the reader. The loved one may have helped you with an art project one time. That's not enough. Like, it's great that your uncle helped you with an art project. But we need more. We need more of how he is involved in your life. You need lots of examples. So additionally, you probably wanted more than just one example of what the blender would blend. Now, by having enough examples, that doesn't always work. So if I have the art project, for example, I can't just say, well, my dad didn't just help me with the art project. He also helped me with math and science, even history. But that's still school projects. I mean, you've got to have a nice, fair range of examples that are all somewhat different so that people understand, well, this is not just in one isolated type of incident. There's all kinds of different ways in which dad was helpful and cared for me. So you have a fair range of examples. So you can't really just prove you can blend an iPhone in your blender, nor can you say, well, I can also do iPods, iPod Nanos, iPads. And you're like, okay, so there's something about Apple products that makes them easy to blend, probably because they're apples. Because at home I got a blender that can blend apples, so it's not a big deal. So you need to have a fair range of examples that include not just an iPhone, maybe other different types of objects like light bulbs, golf balls, and a rake.
Blend the rock in the other video.
What? Does he blend a rock? He's like, does he?
Yeah.
Or he does?
Does he?
I don't know.
Demonstrate that our
That'd be
blenders
impressive.
are not your average blenders.
You know what that is? Sand.
High quality, ultimate distance titanium balls.
And that you break up glass, it turns back into sand. Just a pile of sand. Like, has anybody ever wondered like why on Minecraft when you have sand you can turn it into glass? Ooh, that's where glass comes from. I think the golf balls take a little longer because golf balls are made for that, for being bouncy. Oh, what's in golf balls? Cork? That's gotta be old rubber.
Was he really trying to sell his product? Is that what this is about?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, honestly, I probably buy that.
Why would
I have
you need that?
no cloth, 30-inch rake.
I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, look at this rake. Look how long this rake is, okay? You know, normal rake handle length, alright, see? It goes down that far. Okay, big rake. Gone. So you say, why would you need that?
I mean, you typically use a blender for food and
Yeah.
drink, so.
I mean, I want to ask this question, but I don't know if I'm allowed to. Like, does anybody, if you had a gun license or own guns, you're like, really all I need to stop somebody is a pistol. I have no need for a rifle, an AR, anything like, is anybody going to feel like, well, I don't need an AR rifle because I'll stop him with just a pistol, so I don't need anything that's more powerful.
Right.
Like, I don't know anybody who thinks that way. If I've got a blender that, like, it's like my computer right here. I bought a computer that will run Skyrim. And, like, games like No Man's Sky. Like, I don't play them, but I like to know that if I wanted to, I could.
Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to blend some golf balls, you could. That's why you buy it.
Yeah, well, not necessarily. You just want to know that if it's blending, if it can blend this stuff, it can blend regular stuff easy. You're like, I could throw a pineapple in there, no big deal. Because it does iPhones. It does rakes. Why wouldn't it be able to do a pineapple? You know? And their sales did go up 800% when they started doing these videos. Like, just a few months after they started introducing these videos. And really, it came out of, like, the people in the back room of the facility that, for fun, this is the mark of a true good boss. For fun, they started throwing crap into the blenders just to see if they could get it to blend, you know, stuff like this. And they were like, you wouldn't believe this, watch this. And they're like, you know, really like, hold my beer type stuff. They just started shoving it in there. And then, like, the boss came by and said, no, this is good stuff. We should be making videos of this. And, like, started putting those out, and boom, sales shot through the roof. Because people, like, nobody's going to go out there. In fact, there probably are some kids who are going to make a YouTube video who's going to want to actually do this stuff. But for the most part, if somebody wants a blender, they're not going to be like, you know, I want this blender so that I can blend a rake. However, knowing that it blends a rake makes you fully confident it can blend an apple or a pineapple or a pen. Like, you don't need to do a pen. But, so somehow, the overkill of that example gets people to buy more blenders. So it does persuade. It worked. They're now on the market. In fact, I instantly wanted to buy one. I was like, how much are these?
Did you buy one?
No, they're expensive. Some people, I'm assuming it's the same people who can buy GoPros just without having to plan, were like, oh, I can buy one of these wonders. You know, people have jobs where they make money.
Yeah.
I make decent money, but it's not like, you know, every time I make a purchase, it's a decision. You know, not like somebody who goes, oh, here we go, there's some money, and you're just like, what? How do they do that? You know, somebody says like, oh, look at this, it's at Walmart, we'll buy it for like $200. I'm like, how do you just do that? Like, I've never understood that.
Like that time you spent money on an ROG laptop.
This is an ROG laptop. It's a huge decision. Massive.
You could have just got a Mac or something for school.
Mac? But I know what, I understand how computer, I'm not going to buy a Mac, it costs the same amount and does about half as much. Macs suck. But I like my iPhone because I like the interface. Not all Apple products are bad, I just don't like Macs. What's up with this hand? Get out of there. It's always wanting to be a part of this. Classification division, putting parts into a whole or breaking a whole into parts. That's what classification division is. It's actually fairly simple when we get to it. They're basically direct opposites. Classifying puts things into categories, dividing separates things into smaller categories. So if we think about the fair ranges from earlier, the fair range of examples from me talking about like dad helping with schoolwork, like you might think to yourself, oh, if I'm saying he helped me with art, math, history, science, really that's all just a schoolwork category. So I can categorize those, classify them into the schoolwork category. And that's what classification is. But then you might need to come up with more examples. So you say, he also supported me in deciding to quit football in order to do theater. By the way, this is not a real father. This is a fake father. I don't think there's a real, at least not a Texas father that would do this. He supported me in deciding to quit football in order to do theater. Attending all of my plays, this is rigged, it's really fictional. Even though I saw him fall asleep later claiming I knew plays always bored him. He wanted me to be close by after college, but when I told him I got a great job in New York, he supported my decision. He and Mom flew at least 3 times a year. Even though he hates flying, just so we could all be together for a little bit longer, and he supported my decision to vote for a Democrat. The last part's really fake, and I made that. So now, at least for essays, you want to limit yourself to the number of categories you use. So it's good to be able to classify things in categories and divide them into smaller categories. But if you were to write an essay on the 45 categories of lying, like that's ridiculously long. There's no way you could do that in an essay. In fact, it probably doesn't end up being one long list with you trying to at least fit a definition for each one in, and that wouldn't work. Really 45 categories of lying, that's going to necessitate an entire book. I have a book, I haven't read it, but I've got a book called The 48 Laws of Power at home, like how to, get and maintain power, like in business relationships, which ironically I have the book, but I don't need it because, what kind of power do I need to get at the school? I don't need to be like the CEO of the company or anything. But that takes an entire book for those 48 laws of power. And so I imagine 45 categories of lying also in the book. So you need to limit yourself to the proper number of categories for any type of writing you do. Now, when executed properly in creative ways, classifying can be enlightening as a process. It can shed light on realities of the way things are similar in different ways you never truly imagined. And one might discover through seeing astronomical bodies divided by their size into different categories that the Earth really isn't a very big place after all. Now, this stupid music I'm going to try to mute while we watch this, but they decided to categorize bodies and order them, I'm going to mute that, by their size. So it says, how big are the objects in our universe? Enjoy the comparison. And so it starts with the moon, and you see that the moon, strangely enough, I didn't even know this was not that much different in size than Mercury. Nor is Mars that much smaller. And really, a lot of people don't think about this, but Venus is actually closer to our twin planet because it's mass-wise very similar, even though it has, I think, clouds of sulfuric acid. Then Neptune is slightly larger than Earth, and Saturn, and Jupiter is much larger. In fact, we fit into the red storm on Jupiter, and you can see how much bigger the sun is. And now usually we stop there. But other nearby stars, you have Sirius A, and you have some farther away, Pollux, the orange giant. And so there's our sun right there. Arcturus, the red giant. Aldebaran, the red giant, it's not Aldebaran, that's Aldebaran. And now you can't even hardly see the sun because these other stars are so big. Regal is a blue supergiant. The Pistol star, so that's not even our sun down there anymore. That's like some other bigger star than our sun. Antares A, which is a red supergiant. And then you have Mu Cephei, which is a big red supergiant. The biggest known star is VY Canis Majoris, Red Hybrid Giant. Somebody, can you visit that in Elite Dangerous?
Nobody knows that game.
Huh?
People still play that game.
I do. Occasionally on the weekends. And there's the size of Earth. Now, I think they actually make a mistake here. To me, it's a fine example to say that the star has a diameter of about 2.8 billion kilometers. And they try to divide this in, I think, a way that makes the example less relevant. If you float along in a plane at 900 kilometers an hour, it'd take you 1,100 years to go around the whole thing. To me, that like makes it less impressive. Because what it's doing is dividing it into smaller numbers when you need to leave it at this giant number, 2.8 billion kilometers, which I believe means that if you went from, and this is the average orbit of Pluto, not the furthest orbit of Pluto, but if you went from our star to Pluto in its average area of orbit, I believe that this particular star would, like the radius of the solar system basically, including Pluto, this star would cover that whole radius. So you could fit like 2 across in our solar system. So like, it would just basically encompass our entire solar system if it was here. And it would like dwarf our sun or something, it's like so tiny. So to me that's pretty big. Now, they divided it a little bit too far with the math. And I think when you divide something into 2 separate smaller numbers, it makes it less impressive, especially when it's multiplication, because your mind wants to add them instead of multiply them. So I think that certain types of classification division can work for making things more impressive. Now, additionally, it's interesting to look at humanity beyond just our planet home and look at divisions within our species as well. The previous video showed just how small the Earth is compared with the universe. The next video takes advantage of that realization using a bit more humanity. Admittedly, this video isn't going to move you as much as it did me unless you've seen quite a few movies in your life and have no problems paying attention to both montage and videos and the words we spoke in speech. Just to make sure I have time to get to the rest, let's skip this video for now because it takes about 7 minutes. And I want to make sure that we have enough time to get to that if we do it. With division, it's just like classification. Classification, you're putting things into categories. Division, you're dividing things out of categories. So I already mentioned it briefly when we were talking about that video where you're dividing, literally, math division, a bigger number into a smaller number. So if I took a schoolwork category and wanted to divide it into smaller categories, like what types of schoolwork are there, that I would separate into math, science, history, that kind of stuff. Art, much like this. I'm not doing this one. The tricky thing is figuring out what categories are valid and what divisions are valid, and that's where most people mess up essays. They don't realize that there are certain principles to deciding upon the most logical category to use, and this is a particularly prevalent problem in the cause-effect essay, especially with the solutions, the likely effects. People don't categorize things properly. So when you have categories and you're establishing them, this is true of division as well. All the categories should derive from the same principle. So if we put, my dad helped me with school subjects like math, science, English, and lunch, we lose the impact we mean to make on our audience because lunch isn't a true subject. So they all have to basically derive from the same principle. Lunch is an activity, but it's not really a class, or shouldn't be taught as a class. All the categories should be at the same level. So if we say he helped me with school subjects like math, science, biology, and English, we lose the impact we mean to make on our audience because biology should be combined with science. It's just a form of science. It really should say math, science, English, not math, science, biology, English, because then you're just trying to fit another category in there, which is actually a subcategory of another one. You should also treat all categories significant and relevant to your discussion. This happens a lot in essays that I read as well. A lot of times people will go, like particularly in a persuasive essay, like some sort of topic where there is an aspect of the topic that's inconvenient for you. You're like, well, this kind of goes against what I'm trying to prove, so I just won't include it. And that's not fair to do that. Like if there's something that would go against your idea and what would expose you as maybe being wrong, you need to include it and find a way to counteract it, not just not treat the category at all or pretend it doesn't exist. Now with definition, defining something, the book says that looking at any dictionary definition will reveal a 3-part structure, which is a term to be defined, like basically the word you're defining, a general class to which it belongs, and then qualities that differentiate it from the other terms in that same class. And then it's important to understand formal definitions to understand how you can define essays or ideas in your own essays. So if there's a term to be defined, a general class to which it belongs, and the qualities of different shapes that determine the same class, that is generally how we define. I don't know if I can have these words on the next slide as well. I might. And then I'll come back to this slide. So if you say narrative is a writing style that presents events in a chronological sequence, that's a definition that presents a term to be defined, which is narrative. Then shows how it's different from the others in the class. So the class to which it belongs is writing style, or gives it a class, writing style. Then shows how it's different from the others in its class. So it presents events in a chronological sequence. So that is the quality that differentiates it from the other writing classes. Is narrative is a writing style in which you present events in a chronological sequence. You could say that cause effect sometimes does that, but not always does cause effect specifically deal with events in a chronological sequence. That's specific to narrative. So that would be an example of that. Now the book speaks of definitions of type of essay, which I totally think it's possible you'll end up doing in classes like biology and the sciences, where often they'll say, define this one. Maybe history too, where you're essentially being asked to like explain, which is another way of saying define in that particular case, some war or some battle or some concept in history. Just define this as an essay. When you're doing any sort of definition, watch out for slang. Slang can make things imprecise, and you don't want to include slang in a definition. I've already, I think, used the def as when you kick the bucket example in class before, haven't I? Yeah. It'd be more like if somebody says, what is grief? And you're like, well, grief is when you're so sad that you burst into tears. Now, if I take that to its literal conclusion, it's when somebody who was once whole and complete bursts open, much like an explosion, and becomes tears, which is an exaggeration, not an exact explanation. So that would not work because of the slang. So watch out for slang. Try not to use slang words or even imprecise words. I've already talked about how it can be an essay type. Sometimes you spend an entire essay trying to define something. But the reason it can be an essay type, I think, is because it's so difficult sometimes to define something by putting it exactly into words, exactly what it is. It's one of the reasons I think that personalizing wedding vows can be such a difficult task. Kind of hard to define in not very many words exactly what your love for someone is in essence. I mean, when somebody does like personalized wedding vows, you're defining all of your love in one set of like sentences, which is very difficult. Most people, I think that's why they just read the standard, to have the whole stuff. Because then it becomes just tradition and there's no pressure on you, right? You ever seen a wedding where somebody did personalized wedding vows and the other person did to have in a whole? I've seen that happen before, many years ago. It was a little awkward. It was like pouring my heart out to you. It was like, I take the, or no, I think that they both did that part, but it was like, just the, the person's repeating it back to you what you're supposed to say, but the other person didn't have that. It was interesting. Now in the following video, notice how, because the definition is a little bit more complex, many methods are used to explain what a mimic octopus is, since it's basically a new discovery, or at least a recent one. He gives the term in a class, so he says it's mimic octopus, which is an octopus, that's its class, and then spends the rest of the video trying to classify, divide example, give all manner of support to show that this is a very different kind of animal than your basic octopus. And there's no true way to, I think, encapsulate it with it being something so new.
First by fishermen off the coast of Indonesia in the 1990s. It looked like an octopus, but it could morph its shape in an instant to appear as seemingly any animal around it. At first, no one had any idea what it was.
The first time I saw it, I just was blown away. You couldn't get a more spectacular animal. It really is the pinnacle of wizardry.
Biologist Mark Norman was the first scientist to study this seemingly shapeless creature. He named it the mimic octopus.
The mimic octopus makes itself look like a living, moving animal, so it pulls all its arms around behind its body and swims along like a poisonous flatfish called a banded sole. In other cases, if it's getting attacked, it puts 6 arms down a hole and raises the other 2 arms to look like a poisonous sea snake that has bands along its body. If that's not enough, it'll swim along looking like a poisonous lionfish with these banded arms looking like the banded spines that come off these very deadly fish.
So far, 15 separate species are known to be in the mimic octopus act, and Norman is not always sure exactly what the mimic is doing. He observed this mimic scuttling along the sea bottom, looking something like a furry turkey with human legs.
Sometimes it's hard when you watch a mimic octopus doing what it does to interpret what's going on. It's a bit like looking at ink spots in a psychiatrist's office going, I don't know what that is, it could be a piano, it could be a fridge. So you get 3 or 4 divers together and you'll argue all night trying to work out what we think it was mimicking.
Where did nature's greatest actor come from?
The video ends in like a half second after this. I've watched this video so many times, I know this. So I think we do have just a little bit of time for this. We'll see how long it is because I can't remember. Not the German kid. How long is it? 5:58? Oh, perfect. Somebody seen a lot of movies? Have you seen any movies? They may just not raise their hand for any questions. Turn the other light switch off.
The spacecraft was a long way from home. I thought it might be a good idea, just after Saturn, to have them take one last glance homeward. From Saturn, the Earth would appear too small for Voyager to make out in detail. Our planet would be just a point of light, a lonely pixel, hardly distinguishable from the many other points of light Voyager could see, nearby planets, far-off suns. But precisely because of the obscurity of our world thus revealed, such a picture might be worth having. It had been well understood by the scientists and philosophers of classical antiquity that the Earth was a mere point in a vast, encompassing cosmos. But no one had ever seen it as such. Here was our first chance, and perhaps also our last, for decades to come. So, here they are. A mosaic of squares laid down on top of the planets, and a background smattering of more distant stars. Because of the reflection of sunlight off the spacecraft, the Earth seems to be sitting in a beam of light, as if there was some special significance to this small world. But it's just an accident of geometry and optics. There is no sign of humans in this picture. Not our reworking of the Earth's surface, not our machines, not ourselves. From this vantage point, our obsession with nationalism is nowhere in evidence. We are too small. On the scale of worlds, humans are inconsequential. A thin film of life on an obscure and solitary lump of rock and metal. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering. Thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines. Every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization. Every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every supreme leader, every superstar, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on the mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel, on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other group. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they can become the military masters of a fraction of a dot. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the illusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of air light. Our planet is alone in this bank in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. Like it or not, for the moment, the earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. It underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the only home we've ever known. The Payload Product.
Now you think about it, the whole video is like one big definition where Carl Sagan is defining what the Earth is and classifying it as a very small piece of a larger set of astronomical bodies. And then somebody else decided to come over it and like basically add the music track in the background, which doesn't have anything to what we were talking about today, but then provides examples of different human viewpoints. It's shown on film so you can see their visual difference. To help explain exactly what it was that Carl Sagan himself was talking about back in the 70s. So that kind of combined a couple of the different elements that we talked about today. I'll probably move that to the end of the presentation then for the future. Y'all have a good one.
Sure.
Have a great weekend. I know it's Wednesday. It's weird to say that, but start working on this cause effect essay.